Item B2, agenda approval, additions and or deletions.
Mr. Chairman, some weeks ago, this board asked me to make a presentation to it related to its obligation related to letting taxes for the Watermaster service fee area. The memo was lodged and an item was added to today's agenda for that purpose. And in the meantime, an invitation was sent by the administration to members of the RCD to attend today to discuss the issue. And then I received a request by them to postpone this item to a date, I believe, in August, after they have some meetings at the RCD to be able to deal with some of the issues associated with it. My response to the RCD was I would inform this board of the request to delay the agenda item, but that it remains as scheduled because of the time component associated with the August 15 requirements under the law to levy taxes and notification of the auditor. So with that, it's your prerogative.
Well, I think in the past, you know, when we've noticed things, we've always given the public an opportunity to take up the issue. We could also put it on again, how we can.
I certainly, I indicated to the individual at the RCD that asked for the postponement that this was agendized for today so that this board could deal with any issues that it felt like it had in a time before the August process. I think Supervisor Chapman in particular was interested in dealing with this beforehand rather than in the past.
Yeah. Well, there is
Later.
a calendar of timeframes that need to be adhered to by the agencies that utilize or access the tax roll. So the last 2 years, the complaint that came to the board came to us after those deadlines had been met and passed, and so we were at a disadvantage of addressing the issue because there was no remedy. So my only concern is that we, not put ourselves in that same position. If there's a legitimate complaint that's brought forth by someone, let's try to resolve it or address it in a timely fashion. At least gives the opportunity for us to get input rather than it being a fait accompli.
The RCD board, has also been aware for several weeks of this, so if they're not prepared for today, it's nobody's fault but their own. So.
Very
I mean, I
good.
think the first meeting in August is still before that deadline.
The
The
12th.
12th.
Yeah, so.
Close.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
At least it's prior to, not a month later or 2 months later.
All I wanted to tell is we're under the section agenda approval additions or deletions was if you wanted to remove it from today's agenda and put it off to either next Tuesday, which is the next regular meeting, or the next regular meeting after that, which would be the 12th. Of course, that would be your choice. But I left it where it was for today based on Supervisor Chapman's request to deal with it basically as promptly as possible.
I'd be in favor of hearing it today, and if the board would like, we could also put it back on for next week.
Do we have an upcoming audit on them, on the RCD? Is there one
They're
due?
in the process of,
What was the question?
Upcoming audit on RCD?
The county doesn't do an audit, but they do have their own audit.
Okay, and there's a board member here, and I do believe you have one upcoming?
A draft of the audit should be available today.
Today?
Today.
It seems like a lot of the controversy surrounds the audit process, and maybe with a little more information, we can make a more solid decision.
And yet that is not on the agenda for today. The issue simply was, what role does this board have associated with the levying of taxes?
I'd like to leave, I propose we leave it on, and we could also put it on again for a future meeting.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to ask if we could have item H1 pulled.
Let's take up the 1040 time certain Honey Lake Valley Resource Conservation District.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me catch up to you here if I may. That is item number D5. Thank you very much. As I outlined in my memo, the CAO brought to the board's attention essentially a complaint that was received some weeks ago about the assessment and apportionments associated with the RCD. And the complaint being that basically the RCD was not complying with its legal obligations. And I think it was Supervisor Chapman that asked me in particular to address this issue, and I think the rest of the board concurred. Essentially asking this board, or advising this board, what its obligations are, what its rights are in terms of levying the tax that the auditor presents to it associated with the collection of the water master service fees that's done each year. And so I sought to do that in my memo to you dated July 9, and basically the sum and substance of it is if the RCD presents a properly certified assessment and apportionment to the auditor before August 15, she shall enroll those, and when it's presented to this board for levy, this board shall levy those fees. And that was essentially the conclusion that I reached. Interestingly, that's no different than the conclusion that she reached a couple of years before when the issue was brought up once before. And so there really is no discretion, as I can conclude, in terms of whether these fees are levied or not. That doesn't mean, though, that there's not some due process available for the users on the river, the decreed right holders, to object to a proposed apportionment. As outlined in my memo to you, there is specific reference in the decree from 2007, which substituted the RCD in place of the Department of Water Resources as the water master. And it specifically says that the RCD is to propose and approve a budget by June 1 of each year. If I recall, it's June 1. But that notice of the apportionments, the assessment and apportionments, is to be sent to each of the users by June 15. And thereafter, each of those users has a 2-week window within which to lodge an objection with the Superior Court that rendered the decree. In this case, it would be the Lassen Superior Court. And that objection shall be heard as best as possible before the August 10 date, so that any change to the apportionments based on an objection could be then reflected in that year's apportionments. And so there is a mechanism built into the decree, and so there is a due process component afforded to the users in that regard. The problem has been, and anyways, I hope I answered your question. Simply put, when the RCD presents to us a properly certified assessment with apportionments, the obligation of the auditor is to enroll it, and I believe the obligation of this board is to levy it. And I don't think that we have any discretion under the law. That assumes proper certification.
But the magic date is the June 15th.
No, the magic date is August 15, as I understand it. This,
And the court sets August 10th as kind of the cutoff.
yes.
Appeals to the August 15th act.
But,
It sets the August 10 date as a date by which they shall have heard and decided, should have heard and decided, any objections lodged in the court.
But if they don't, by August 10th, whatever was pre-existing
Stands.
stands.
And if there's a decision that's held over until the next year, then there'll be a change in the next year's apportionment to reflect that later decision.
on the, where you say that wherever the budget with the apportionment shall be served by mail on the water right holders by June 15th.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the date, what I was referring to, but it doesn't appear that that's being done, is that correct?
Well, my understanding from the complaint is that the users were notified as to what the total amount of the budget was going to be, but not their individual apportionments
By June 15th.
by June 15th. Now, here's the rub. The decree requires that, but the code does not. So there's no remedy in the code for a failure to do that. At best, it's something for which a user could object,
The only remedy you have is to appeal to the court, because.
lodge an objection.
Yeah, and that's what that says. And that's why, this came before us before, but it was after all the fact, it was retroactive, and there was no way you could go back and undo it. And none of us knew the answer, so that's why when the issue came up again early this year, I wanted to, because there's still time between now and August 10th. So if the parties that, from what I read here, if the parties are agreed, have any recourse, they have to appeal to the Superior Court and get a resolution or direction or intervention of the Superior Court prior to August 10th of this year in order to affect the apportionments that would be applied by the auditor on August 15th.
Correct.
And
Now, interestingly,
but
there
if the
was
court-
such an objection filed this year.
Right, but if the court waits until October to address the issue, it can and will, because it's the dominant body, but the implementation of that would take place in next year's apportionment.
And that's correct. I'm sorry, Supervisor Hammond. You should note, and it was listed in my memo to the board, that kind of in the last minutes of my draft in the memo, I became aware of the proposition that an actual objection had been lodged.
Right.
So it appears, I don't know the basis necessarily of the objection, but one has been advanced, and, I'm left to say that,
Constituents have appealed to this body to intervene on their behalf in a process that they feel that they are not being properly served. What this memo tells us is we don't have the power to intervene, but the courts do.
quite right, the RCD is an autonomous entity, and it is the RCD to which those, and the court is the body where you go for the due process on that issue, sir.
Okay, that was the question that I felt that we needed to have addressed so that the constituents who have the concern can be given a proper answer.
Yes, sir.
For those in the audience, the way the meeting will first, are going to take questions by the board on the county council's report, and then we'll go to the public and you'll have the opportunity to bring your questions. Is there any other questions by board members of the county council's report?
Paul, even though there has been a case filed with Superior Court, do you know if it even, what the objection being filed, does it pertain to this topic we're talking about today, or do you even know?
Oh, I think so, but the objection, I don't recall the specifics of it, if they were even listed on there. But my guess would be that the objection was premised upon the fact that the users weren't notified of what their respective apportionments were. And that seems fair to me. You're being asked to either accept what the RCD is saying your share is, what you're being billed for, but when you're not told what that is, how are you to object or not? And so I think an objection was lodged based on that premise, that they weren't told. And the court decree says they're to be told, and it doesn't appear that they weren't. In fact, I got an email confirmation as listed in the memo from, I think, the Secretary of the District that confirmed that they weren't told, and in fact it said that, well, you'll figure it out when you get your tax bill. And
Is that contempt of court when they do that?
that's a great question. What I didn't know is, and it'd be up to a judge to decide, is whether the failure of the RCD to perform its obligation like it is supposed to, by June 1 approving the budget, June 15 sending a notice to users, and including in that notice the assessment and the apportionment, whether or not that's just a failure on their part, so you're not going to get to collect your fees, or if it also constitutes a contempt of court. That would be ultimately up to a judge to decide. I think a fair argument. If I was a lawyer standing in front of a court and I was arguing that, I think I might like my position if I was arguing in favor of contempt of court.
The timing of these things just doesn't seem right. So you get notice that you get an assessment, but the audit isn't due in June, but the audit isn't due until August 15th. So where do you know,
Well,
where the
wait,
finances?
apples and oranges. And what I mean by that is as follows. The assessment and apportionments are an estimated cost for the district to conduct its operations for the coming year.
Right, I get that,
Okay,
I get that.
all right.
And I know they have a budget, and I believe that budget's due in June also.
I believe so, yes.
So if there's questions about the budget, then they get assessed, and it's not audited till August 15th, and the objections are due by August 10th.
My understanding of the audit would be that that would be for the past year's financial activities, not the coming year's financial
It is, but
activities.
that's what the budget's for, but I mean, then what if the budget's, the audit discloses some discrepancies, and then then what?
It's hard for me to speculate based on what you're presenting, sir.
Just, the timing of this stuff doesn't seem right to me.
Okay. Is there any other questions of county council's report of board members before we go to the public? Okay, so at this time, we'll take public comment. I don't have any speaker cards, so I'll go by raising hands. Mr. Trask, you have your hand up.
Could we ask specific questions of the attorney before we do this? Because it
Hold on a second. Okay. I'm gonna have Mr. Trask come, and when you come up, you can ask whatever questions you'd like to the attorney or. I'll call you next, John.
Yes, Bob was right.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Jim.
I'm sorry, what?
Mike Trask.
No, what'd you say before that?
I said you were right.
Oh, sorry. I
On a
apologize.
certain aspects, you left a few things out.
It's quite possible.
It's not only to us to be notified by June 15th, it is also the Superior Court of Blaskin County.
Yes, quite right. I concur.
And that's where the rub has been the last several years, that you've seen my face here, not that you guys want to see it any more than what you have to, but the RCD never filed it with the court, per Richard's request for me to take it to the court, that it was a court issue. But the court would not accept it because RCD never filed anything with the court to complain or whatever against. So this is the first opportunity that we've had since 2007 in order to file a complaint with the court over
See,
this matter.
And I've heard this reference before, that the court would not accept a complaint to be filed on the issue. And I'm one of those guys, I'm going to claim being from Missouri at that point. You're going to have to show me that first for me to accept that proposition, that a court who's in the business of receiving complaints all day long and twice on Sundays doesn't accept a formal complaint.
I'll get a letter
Okay.
from Mary at the court if
Fair
that's what this board wants. But the court clerks are the ones that told us that you cannot file the complaint unless there has been something filed with the court to complain against. So, and that's why this year, since they submitted one, finally, we did our court paperwork to it. I came here in February and I gave all the rigmarole from 2007 on to Richard there, and I have never got an answer back, even with the letter that I gave to the board for RCD appointing their own board members. Mr. Crabtree, the county council at the time, sent a letter out to the RCD telling them that they had no authority to appoint their own board members. And that's never been answered, that I've never seen an answer to, but yet they've been appointing their own board members.
I was asked to address today the issue of the levying of the taxes, and I'm happy to answer any questions associated with that. We didn't agendize anything else, I wasn't asked to present on that issue. If the board wants me to look at that issue, I think it was looked at already there. I saw a memo recently on it. Happy to deal with that, but it's not noticed for today, regrettably. And so-
Well, anyway, for the budget thing, that's our complaint that we've had for years, or what, is that it's been done illegal, and there were several years there that this board was not even notified but yet they still withdrew our money. So if you guys are supposed to approve what the auditor's office does, you'd think that you guys would get notified of what's going on. But the proof in the pudding that I got from the auditor's office, you guys weren't even notified, 2, 3, 4 years they're out of there.
You're saying that taxes were, RCD presented taxes to the auditor, which she enrolled and then presented, or didn't present to this board, and they were collected from you?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know which year, sir?
Yeah, I gave it all to Richard. I can go back through it again and bring it in again, but I gave it all to Richard back in February.
Okay.
The auditor disagreed, for what it's worth.
Well, I can bring in her original paperwork that she gave me. And there's not even copies of it with the letterhead from the signed board members or the president or chairman of the board of RCD to the auditor. It's from Mr. White, or the previous water master, Keith, and they're not the actual water master. All they are is a deputy, but they're the ones submitting the paperwork for collection of the fees.
But on the issue that you present, which is that this taxes were levied against citizens, property holders.
Correct.
Taxes were levied for this water master service fee, were not approved by this board. That's an easy thing to check. I mean, it's simply a function of looking at the minutes of this board's activities around the same time frame in the years that you identified. I would think that would be.
Because in the paperwork that was sent to the auditor, it has CC'd on there to everybody that's supposed to get a copy, and this board was not copied with the letterhead or anything from the assessment or anything from the RCD.
All right, thanks, Michael. Thank you. John, Richard?
I apologize.
think
No, please continue.
Did you want to speak in?
He's certainly has something to say.
Did you want to speak, though? You had your.
Oh, yes, I do, but Mr. Burns was trying to say something.
No, I just wanted to say, I don't know, I wasn't here during that period of time, in this capacity. Sounds like somebody was.
If I could add, and this may be splitting a hair, I think the requirement that Mr. Trask was referring to about the board notification is that the chair of the board is who it's CC'd to. And, just because there may be a document that shows that it's CC'd to a particular person does not necessarily mean that that person received the document. Because I know in my conversation with him, and it dates back to 2011 when I last served as chair, the document showed it was CC'd, this, a portion of this definitive document was CC'd to the chair of the board of supervisors. And I sat as the chair that year, and I never received such a document. I'm not saying that one wasn't maybe intended to, but somewhere in the system it probably had been intercepted. But to my knowledge, the chair is not functioning as an individual, but functioning as a representative as the board as a whole. And maybe it was received by some office, but I never was able to ascertain who received it on behalf of the board. But I know as chair of the board, I did not receive that document that supposedly was sent. And I think that's part of the process, or the problem with the process as you try to sort all this stuff out. So
Maybe I'm misunderstanding, because as I understood Mr. Trask, I thought the suggestion was that notwithstanding whether a copy is provided to the chair at the same time that it's sent to the auditor and to the courts, that this board is a body, that it wasn't noticed and agendized and never passed upon. That's what I understood the comment to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was never an item that was of discussion by the board or presented to the board or the board became intimately knowledgeable of as a document. I mean, there are probably a lot of documents that we as board members should be receiving, not just on this issue, but on a myriad of issues. And a lot of times people just assume, that's why it's sometimes difficult to have a conversation. Because I think what initiated this, I received a phone call one night from Mr. Trask, and he was pretty animated about, what was, and I'm sitting there like totally clueless, because the documents and the other things that, and he's looking at saying, well, you're listed here as somebody. I'm going like, well, that may be so. I'm not saying that people can't do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that document. So I was like totally at a disadvantage in the conversation, because it took me a while to sort through and figure out really what, it probably was a few months later we had a follow-up conversation. I that conversation, I actually understood what he was talking about from 3 or 4 months before, because it took that much time to kind of gather the information. So it was difficult to have a conversation with somebody in which you don't have the tools to converse.
4277 of the water code is pretty plain, and it says that the Board of Supervisors shall annually, at the time of levying county taxes, levy on the land within the county and within the water master service area a portion that's sufficient to raise the amount certified by the department, RCD. And so simply CCing a copy isn't sufficient. It has to be approved by this board, period, as I view it.
And I don't recall that's ever been the case.
I think that, an auditor may chime in here too, I think that occurs at the time that the board levies all taxes at the time of passage of the budget.
But when we pass the budget and do that, is there a document like that included in the pile of documents that we're voting on? I mean, I don't think you're gonna find that in the record very often. I don't recall.
I believe there's a levying of the $1 tax rate, and whether or not it's, in the past, it's been assumed that that language, whatever it is,
It may be
applies
assumed
to
that that
the.
language does apply to it. Does that mean that the board is intimately knowledgeable of that document as being part of the record?
Certainly didn't suggest that.
No.
I'm under the impression that the actual apportionments ought to be part of the record.
Well, I would
Of this
think,
board.
I would think it would be and should be, but I'm just stating, I don't think it has been
I don't know the answer to that.
historically.
Council, is this any different than a fire district, a school district? I mean, those taxes are all collected through the auditor, and obviously we don't approve all of those.
Oh, but yes, I believe you do at the time that you approve all of the county taxes each year. Certainly.
It's just a rubber stamp approval, though. I mean,
The difference between the fire districts and those, they don't have a list of all their, like, the property owners in the district. But this water master thing is kind of separate. There's an actual list of these are the people and this is the amount they're going to be apportioned. So by reference, that document, needs to be part of the file, but I don't think that file, the board has ever gotten that included in their file. Our action may, as a broad brush, incorporate the fact that we're assessing that, but us giving that list as part of understanding what that action is, that's never been the process.
Maybe Madam Auditor-elect has an answer to that question, I don't know.
I don't at this time, no.
But I don't think, you can go back, I don't know how many auditors, it's not just the current administration. I'm talking about back when Irene Doyle was there, when Pete Etherburn was there, going back to the beginning. That has never been, the filing. It might be a file that's in, say, the auditor's office, and that's one of the resultants of the resolution we do when we approve the budget and apportion or order the 1% tax to be collected. It's all inherent to that. Itemization of that part of it has never been provided to the board.
Jim, how about if you look back before RCD, DWR used to carry this function.
Right.
Correct.
And we paid, on our title, same thing, we paid tax through them.
It was the exact same process.
Exactly, yeah. We never received a paper for us to be approved.
DWR would send a paper, but it would be on file with the auditor. It never, the board was aware that maybe there was.
It's not something that comes on our agenda and we approve.
No. I don't think that's ever been the case.
Well, suffice to say, a properly certified budget must at least be presented to the auditor each year by the date certain, and then passed upon by this board and approved.
When we
But
had
it
this
is-
dispute in 2011, the auditor at that time certified that she had received it within the time frame
Yes.
and she acted accordingly. And I believe consistently over the years that they have asserted that.
Okay.
She received it in time, yes, but the court or none of us did,
Or the board,
or the board,
yeah.
and yet they still withdrew the money.
But she operated on the premise, irrespective of whether or not the others received it, she did, as long as she had it in her office by that date, when she put the roll together, it was incorporated.
It appears that's what the statute
And that's
says.
what the statute says for her to do, and she says that's what she's going to do, unless the court tells her otherwise. And that's been kind of where we've been at.
I think this problem might well be solved if, and perhaps this is an unpopular remark, but if the RCD was more proactive in improving their budget in a timely basis, in notifying its users on a timely basis, and effectively across the board with all the users that are affected, which is all of them. I'm, based on some previous interactions I've had, I'm left with the opinion that doesn't, I'm going to understate here, always happen. And so that's regrettable. I don't know that necessarily we would be here if that communication was better.
Okay, yes, come up and state your name for the recorder, please.
My name is John Richards. I'm the president of Lassen Irrigation Company and a District 5 resident. I'm also speaking as a landowner and an individual. Lassen Irrigation Company, 3 years in a row, did protest to the court, but since it does not go on Lassen Irrigation Company's tax rolls, the court would not hear the case, and therefore you were our final destination for letters that went to the court. They were CC'd to the board in the past, CC'd to the district attorney, to the past county administrators. We've asked for relief. We've asked for help, and I'm not an attorney. Mr. Burns, can you explain to me the difference between a fee and a tax?
That's a whole conversation, the likes of which I don't even know that I'm educated enough to respond to. This, I believe, would be fairly considered a fee. I don't know for the average person there's much of a difference. It's still money going out of pocket.
Mr. Burns is incredibly educated, and I think he's too hard on himself. But quite frankly, I believe that when the money comes in and we pay for a service, we do not pay for our water. We pay for a service. The service says that you're going to take our money, and in lieu of that, you're going to do certain things in a timely manner, and you're going to do them in open session. And you're going to put it in a budget of sorts, and you're going to follow the budget. That, in fact, hasn't happened. And at some point, those fees then became taxes. This board doesn't have the right to assess taxes on us as individuals, only fees. As a user of water and the water service, we do not have the ability to be taxed. What does that mean? To me, for the last 6 years, there hasn't been an audit, there hasn't been an approved budget 5 or 6 of the years in a timely manner. And many people in this room have said, in our help, in our request for relief, have said you have to go to the courts. And we have, and we're there currently. And when somebody sends out a document or says something illegal, if Mr. Chapman would say something that was a blatant lie in this open session, Mr. Burns, is that a felony that he would blatantly lie about something in an open session as a public official?
I don't know, Mr. Richards.
Financially.
I don't know that I'm inclined to answer in that fashion. Thank you.
Okay. So if you have people who know something is not right, a tax versus a fee, timelines that are not met, and then quite a few excuses, it would seem to me that if past practices, and there's going to be an audit coming your way soon, and I respectfully request you see the last year's audit before you make your decision. But I personally believe that we have been taxed, and I believe that you gentlemen as a board do not have the right to tax us. And that is the rub. It says you shall levy fees, but you don't get to tax us. And that is what's taking place. And therefore, since we are aware that it is a very, very fine line between taxes and fees, we may want to get an opinion on that. We also may want to get an opinion where it comes to the utilization of the money in the Jarvis GAN when it comes to totals that are available to us. Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because there's 500 special districts in our area, 300? Ballpark. It's over 100. So this district is in the top 1% of egregious financial mismanagement in our county. And that's why we're here to discuss it. We're not here to discuss schools, because they get audited twice a year, and if there's an issue, everybody knows. And we're not here to discuss a hospital board. We're here to discuss something that happened in 2007, and since everything has slipped through the cracks in regards to finances, I truly believe that in this year, we should stop the madness. We should not pass this tax. We should not allow the past practices to be ignored and say we might do better in the future in the name of a fee. And I would respectfully request that you look at their audit before we go forward. That would be my hope as a representative of 90 people who, just like me, didn't have a voice with the court, who had you folks as our one and only hope to make this RCD board do what they're supposed to do in addition to our written mandate. Is there any questions that I can answer? Or?
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, just step forward and state your name for the record.
My name is John Mallory. I'm a Lassen Creek water user. Currently, we as water users, under the Susan River Decree, do not pay for the water we use. The water does not actually belong to the users. It belongs to the state. The beginning of the state water code creates this authority by laying claim to all the waters of the state, and it merely allows people to use the water according to its foregoing rules. I learned this fact 7 years ago during the Big Pine fire. I have a 10-acre-foot stock pond on my property, and in the course of 3 hours, 3 helicopters were able to pull out over 200 buckets of water from this pond. Their actions saved over 40 structures in the fire's path. When I inquired to CDF about my missing water, I was informed it was the state's water all along. No thank yous, no apologies. In the past 10 years, this pond has been utilized by helicopters in 5 fire suppression efforts. With that being said, what we do pay for is service, whether or not we receive this water. This service is responsible for administering our local decrees and upholding the 4000 series of the California State Water Code. In 2007, our local court gave this authority to the Honey Lake Valley RCD. The RCD has found it very difficult to comply with the rules associated with their new responsibilities and has continually shown an unwillingness to comply with the water code, their own rules and regulations, and our decrees. For the last 4 years, I have tried to compel the Water Master Board to comply with their budget apportionment requirements under the State Water Code and under our own decree. As an outsider, I have not been very successful. Every year since 2007, some portion of the process has been flawed in various degrees. This year, the users were served with a budget and the assessment, but it failed to contain the apportionment as required by our own decree. When I inquired to the Water Board at their June 25th meeting where my apportionment was, Mr. Willis Dow informed me I would see it on my tax bill. This denies any water user the ability to ascertain if their water assessment is correct. Once you as the Board of Supervisors approve the tax roll next month, it is too late to fix any problems. Notifying water users of their individual assessments is also necessary for financial planning. As you can see from the graph I provided, my apportionment for the past 6 years has fluctuated up or down 100% from year to year. Up to 100%, excuse me. I only represent a 2.7 CSF share of the water apportionment. There are water users with over a 30 CSF water share. The Honey Lake Valley RCD has created a culture of not following the rules. It is my hopes you can deny their ability to utilize the tax rolls until they are willing to comply with the rules. This would force them to send out water master fees themselves, and thus give the users the avenue to protest the fees if incorrect. If you are not able to do this, I ask that you please write a letter admonishing the water board for not following their own water assessment process. Are there any questions?
No questions, but I understand all you guys' frustrations. It's pathetic, you know, what in my opinion. I've attended some of those meetings, I've seen some of the arguments, I've seen the way the meetings are run. It's chaos, and it's disgraceful as far as I'm concerned about the way they're not following through with what they're supposed to.
They've created a culture of not wanting to follow rules.
But it's just, it's beyond, it's just disgusting.
It's frustrating. Thank you.
And John, I would like to thank you. That was probably the most articulated narrative on what a water master's water fees, and except for the first part of your letter, that was very well articulated, very well explained, and thank you for that. It was very
Thank you, Mr. Outlaw.
Okay, anyone else from the public would like to speak on the matter? Come on up and just state your name for the recorder.
So I'm sitting now. Thank you. My name is Barbara White, I'm a water user. I do volunteer work for the RCD's reporting process. The assessment that you're talking about, that's been a bone of contention for all the 4 years that I've been involved in this. The RCD took on the duty in 2007, and the court order says you shall enforce the decrees, all of them, all 3 of them, and not just portions of them, and you shall enforce the water code. Quite simply, that's what they're empowered to do. The water code is real specific in how fees are done, 4251, 4252, and 4253, 4254, and how it's assessed. And those are available online. A couple of years ago, this manner of assessment thing came up, whether or not the budget, which is usually done in a timely manner by RCD, is the assessment. And we checked with DWR, and their process was not to send out individual assessments. They send out a blanket letter to all the water users to let them know what the budget is for that year. And that is suffice. They said they tried the individual assessments once and it was chaos, just like this was last year when they tried the individual things. You're right about the timelines. They're kind of a mess. And the ownerships, to get a correct mailing, first of all, you need to have the ownerships correct. You need to address lot splits. And over the last few years, we've learned that prior lot splits have not been addressed in the control cards, which is like the master billing thing. And the control cards need to be transferred, the ownerships need to be transferred onto Excel billing reports and usage reports, so they need to match so that everybody gets the right bill, right? It's not, the bill is not on a service. Per the control cards, you're billed on the CFS that's allotted to your property. And that's real plain. Those are public records. You're billed on whatever your CFS is. All the other stuff about process is probably because since 2007 there hasn't been a clear process. When Jeff and I started this thing, there was no clear how to. We had to kind of back up and figure everything out. And yes, the August 10th is the deadline to get it to the auditor's office. Before that, the RCD has to adopt their budget by the 15th. Somewhere along the line, so that you get the correct mailing on the billing reports, you have to go update the control cards and address the lot splits. There needs to be a deadline moved up on that. And perhaps we need to have a real clear process for the RCD with all these deadlines that work. Because by now, Jeff has worked with the assessor's office, and they've constructed a process whereby from the control cards that he was handed, they've tagged water right parcels. So now they can do a report every year and say, okay, these are the water right parcels. Out of all of them, these 13 have changed ownerships. And maybe these 2 have lot splits. Now in those lot splits, you create another control card, because now there's 2 where there was 1. And then he has to go out there in the field process and say, okay, where did the water rights go? Do they stay with all the parcels as one omitted? And so that has to be transferred on the control cards. It's a harrowing process trying to keep the accuracy. And over the last 4 years, we finally, with the help of the assessor's office, we finally got it pretty clean. Last year, we paid the assessor's office extra to go back and do all the things that had been omitted since 2007. When DWR did the process before it was handed off, they hired the assessor's office to update the control cards. And so when RCD took it on, they just kind of handed all this process to the deputy of the day, whoever they hired in the contract. And so I'm suggesting at this point to the RCD, and I hope it's put on the next agenda, that they take their paperwork process internally, as the water master, be responsible for the control cards. Make sure they're updated. Give the lot splits to your deputies so he can tell you which ones have a water right. Be responsible for the billing report so that you know you have, it's an Excel thing, so that you know all the right people are being billed, et cetera, et cetera. Take it internally. The deputy would still do the 2-page judge's letter and the monthly field notes. So first of all, we need a clear dateline process, and everything's cleaned up now, so it's easier. All we need to do is go back and say, okay, you need this by then. You've decided, yes, you want to do the apportionment to the individuals instead of the blanket budget. Okay, then you need to back up all the deadlines and make time for that. Because before you can do that, you have to check all the control cards with the assessor and make sure you got all the people right, you know? So it's just a paper process. It is not, it just hasn't been clarified and solidified. And there's been just a whole mess of bifurcation. I've been to these meetings for the last 4 years. There's been a whole mess of bifurcation and negative stuff thrown around when the time should have been spent on this forward motion. They've been having to deal with a whole lot of dirt that really had no point. And some of the water users have a complaint that, well, you're not doing anything for me. Like, and I brought this up as hopefully an agenda item. Why doesn't RCD take on common water area issues just like DWR used to? Like in the archives that were handed off to Jeff, there was a really nice process for part of Baxter Creek that they were going to help them put together because there's a sand hole in Baxter Creek. You can't get water past it. And we've asked a couple times. So now, I'm sorry I'm boring you, but you know all this stuff. Now maybe we can move forward and get a clear process, clear deadlines, clear who's doing what. So as this thing is passed around, it's not messed up constantly. Because it's clean now. We just need some timelines to adhere to.
Barbara, I just want to, I don't mean to cut you, but we hear you. Unfortunately, you're preaching to the choir, really. We understand, we feel that those comments do hopefully do get on the agenda. And those are the things that the RCD as a board needs to take to heart and fix. And, it's something I think if we have the opportunity as this board, we would certainly implement decisions, but it just seems like the cries for help are falling on deaf ears there. I don't know. Again, I understand and share your frustration, but.
Yeah, it's a real clean, simple process.
Mr. Burns?
Thank you. I have a question. Ms. White, is it?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you here today on behalf of the RCD board?
No, I'm here as a water user because
Okay.
I pay water rights too.
Okay.
I just happen to be familiar with the paperwork because I do it every year on a volunteer basis.
So you're not speaking on behalf of the RCD
Absolutely
board
not.
here today?
I'm
Okay. I just
speaking
wanted
as
to
a
make
water
sure.
user, and anybody that wants to look at these reports or learn this process, It's all public record.
So was there a budget approved by the RCD by June 1 of this year for this coming year? Do you know?
We have a budget, yeah, because we have to
But-
put it into the usage reports.
But was there one approved by the RCD board by
Yes.
June 1? There was?
Yes, because
Okay.
the secretary sent me, to do the billing reports, you have to put it in this Excel formulated sheet. And she has to provide the minutes approving that, to submit it to the auditor.
And so that was done
I
before
understand.
June 1?
I don't know.
You
We
don't?
have a RCD board member we could maybe ask.
Perhaps.
Do you know the answer to that?
I didn't know if anybody was going to present themselves on behalf of the RCD board today, on behalf of the board.
Jesse is a member.
Do you know if the budget was approved by June 1?
I'm not sure if it was or not.
Is it, you would know though, when you as a board member? Don't you vote on that?
If I've missed a meeting in May, end of May. So I don't know if it was at that meeting or not.
Let me ask another question, if I may. Were the users were notified by June 15 of the budget for the year, do you know?
They sent out a generic, a letter to all water users,
Was that the $130,000 number?
the whole
Okay.
budget,
But
correct?
no apportionment was included in that, was it?
The prior year, they did an apportionment thing, and there was all kinds of craziness. And
But
so
they're
we-
obligated to set an apportionment, aren't they?
But see, that's a
By
different
court order.
interpretation.
Oh, no,
Because-
it's actually quite plain on the black letter of the court decree, isn't it?
I really don't know.
Have you read it? Have you read it?
Okay, I'm the enemy here.
No, I was
At
just
the
asking a
time-
question.
At the time, we asked DWR,
Uh-huh.
because last year, the individual apportionments were sent out. The prior years, all the prior years, there was sent out a budget, and that's what DWR did. And we asked DWR when this issue came up, Mr. Mallory brought it up. And they said, no, we send out the budget generically. We don't send out individuals, and that's the way we've been doing the thing.
Okay.
And again, that's process, is that gonna be a clear process? Then we have to move the dates around to get everything updated. And it's chuckles like this that bifurcate the process.
I'm sorry,
I
if my
no.
questions were a little aggressive, I apologize.
Well, no, it's
I'm
the
trying to figure it
giggles
out.
back here, have been the giggles all through these last few years.
Thanks.
Anyway,
I appreciate it very much. So, okay, is there anyone else?
Jesse Claypool, Tenellic Valley RCD. I'm a member of the RCD board, but I'm not here representing the board. I just found out from county council this morning that our staff requested that this be postponed on the agenda, so I didn't know that.
You weren't told of that, sir?
No. This agenda item to me seems pretty straightforward. The RCD is a special district that has the ability to levy an assessment. It doesn't matter if it's water, wire and cable, or tangerines. We have an obligation to do it in a very specific, identified manner. We haven't been doing that. We've been requested by county officials, members of the public, former board members of the RCD, current board members of the RCD to do it. And for some unknown reason, we're having troubles. And the cries for help have fallen on deaf ears everywhere. And I don't think that it's necessarily this body's responsibility to make the RCD act like grown-ups. But it kind of is. This board sent a notice out to the RCD requesting that they go to board member workshops. To date, I'm the only board member that's ever been to a board member workshop. The rest of them thumbed their nose at you. The grand jury, on your behalf, has sent letters to the RCD about your ethics trainings that's required. Board policies, you have to follow them. And nothing's happened. So, as a board member, I feel the frustration of everybody in this room also. What do we do? Where do we go for help? I agree with some of the comments that were made that this is a money issue. And you've heard me say this to you guys before. This is money. We've got money issues with the RCD. And I would hope too that the audit that is being prepared is done and be able to get to you guys before the timeline, before the August 10th timeline, because that is hand in hand with this. If we don't have the history of good accounting practices, how can we move forward with good cash management practices and billing practices? We can't. So that's my plan.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks. I know you were somebody that, you know, wanted my votes for appointees, and I appreciate, you know, what you've been trying to do there. I know it hasn't been easy, and you know, it's frustrating, and, but anyhow, for what it's worth, I appreciate what you're trying to do, and the fact that you were the only one that went to the training of the board that you suggested, so thank you. I think we better try to wrap this up.
One quick note,
Sure.
and that is that I'm informed by Mr. Egan that he sent an invitation to the board members of the RCD to attend, and we have one in attendance. And I'm thinking it's not the one that needs to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so, I'll leave it to county council, what do you, I mean, we basically, the action requested was to receive the report, we certainly
Correct.
done that, and,
I don't think there's any action for you to take at this point. There was
Right.
certainly none noticed. I think that the auditor will do what the auditor does come tax time, and we will hear from her as to whether or not it has been properly presented or not. And if it, and it will be on this board's agenda for adoption or not, and when the county taxes are levied, and we'll have an opportunity to address it at that time.
Can I make a suggestion, Richard, that to separate this out so that it stands out, it's not blended in, when it comes to the budget, if you would please?
Makes good sense.
okay, so I think we've finished on this item.